Hello, hello, hello. I am streaming to you from my sewing room on this Friday night. Welcome. If you don't know me, my name's Mary. I am just talking sewing while sewing, so if you want to be kind of geeky about it and get sewing done with me, that's awesome. Okay, so I'm working on Chalk and Notch Mini Marcel for my daughter. It is a pink and white striped seersucker dress. It's got gathers. This is the center back panel. That's where we got to last time we sewed the center back panel to the side panels. We need to sew the front. And then the other thing we still have to do is build the bodice. I'm doing this out of order for no other good reason than that I didn't want to do it in the other order, you know. So, I'm thinking I want to do the bodice tonight. Not because I'm really in the mood to do anything fiddly. I'm actually really, really tired. Yay for not sleeping and being busy. But the reason I want to do the bodice is because I want to try it on Maddie before I attach it to the skirt. So that, and if I do want to let it in or out, it will not go in. I'm a little worried it's going to be too tight. So if anything, I'm going to need to let it out a little bit. So that way, if I need to let it out, I will be able to do so before sewing this front panel on. And then when I do the front panel, I'll be able to adjust the seam allowance at the top if I had to make any changes. So I'm going to set this one aside for the moment, and we're going to work on the bodice tonight. Okay. So here are the two. This is the front bodice pieces, two pieces. One is interfaced, one is not. Here are the back pieces, same thing, two pieces. One is interfaced, one is not. And two straps, which I made the other night. They're all stitched up and sewn ready to go. So, I think I'm going to go ahead because I've been pondering, do I even want to put the full facing on? But I will, because it's so easy to adjust that facing even once it's been attached. I will probably baste in, well, I will probably baste in the straps on the back and then not do the understitching so I can try it on. We'll talk through it all as I go, but that's probably what I'll do. So if I need to tear the straps back out, I will. She is such a tall child that I'm this, that's a lot of strap, but I think it'll be okay. So that's the plan. Let's get started. Okay, first thing I'm gonna do is baste these. I'm gonna sew them to the front and baste them to the back so that I can do the adjustments there. So there is, I wonder if other fabric will be easier to see in my cameras. Is it just this fabric or is it my lighting? I don't know. We'll see. But there is a seam right down the middle. This is a tube that was sewn in half and turned, so the seam side is the wrong side. So I'm just going to put right sides together on this, and then I will go to my, what Canon zoom, I think. There we go. It's a little better. You still can't see real well on this machine, but it's better than nothing. Okay, right sides together, so I'm just going to baste this in the center real quick. Now, the actual instructions may have you do this differently. I really should look, because generally pattern designers kind of know what they're doing, but I am just going to wing it. Okay, pedal is finally on the floor. Here we go. Nope, stop. Check my stuff again. I am super tired, so we're just going to take everything really slow and make sure I'm doing everything right here. Basting, so it's on a baking stick. Basting. Baking? No. Not baking. I'd burn it if I was baking tonight. Alright, second strap, so here's the wrong side. Right sides together. On this one, let me see if I can switch, see if you can see this. Interfacing fabric, I always just ignore interfacing and use fabric line. So if you ever, if your interfacing ever doesn't line up with your fabric, use the fabric. Use the fabric, not the interfacing. Okay, basting this one on. I'm basting inside this final seam allowance. Ta-da! Okay, so now I'm going to put the non-interfaced back onto the interfacing right sides together. And I'm going to stitch along the top edge here. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and set up my machine again. So we're now doing a straight stitch, and I usually set mine at 2.5. Yeah, this is a very manual machine. It's not a machine. I'm so tired. Computerized machine, so it doesn't have digital anything. So it's just between the 2 and the 3, about halfway, roughly. Not feeling particularly accurate this evening. Okay. Okay, now it's really, you probably can't see. Maybe this weekend I'll just splurge on a little webcam for this because you can't see it all, but there is a point. Here's the pattern piece. So on this front one, I'm sewing along like this. And I'm going to get to here, and I'm going to keep my needle down at this point and pivot it, so I can then go here, needle down and pivot it, and then come across and do the same on the other side. So my goal is to get the needle down right at the 3/8 inch line, so that when I pivot and put the foot back down again, I'm right ready to sew at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Depending on how things go, sometimes you can't get it that accurate, but I'll fiddle around until it's pretty darn close. I also hand crank sometimes to make sure we're getting it right there, and then you kind of just shove the fabric where it needs to go, because there are times when sewing is a delicate art, and there are times when you just manhandle it under the machine and make it work. So, okay, coming around the neckline now. So there we go, I pivoted, it's not quite there, so instead of going a full stitch, I bring the needles where it's almost back in the fabric, lift the presser foot, and just scoot it back a little bit until it's right where I want it to be. It would make more sense if you could see me do it, so maybe this weekend it's worth a splurge. That's a question I never thought I'd be asking myself. How many webcams in a sewing room are too many webcams? And at this point, the answer is there is no such thing as too many webcams, as far as I can tell. Okay, so I'm pulling the strap to turn this right side out. Ta-da! There we go. So this is looking really funky, but it's because it's interfaced, and I have not cut my clipped my seam allowances yet. So there it is. That is the top of the front bodice. And I am going to go ahead and clip these. I always get a little nervous clipping seam allowances before I do a try-on with it, because what if I need to adjust it? But length is probably not the direction we're going to cut it in. The length will be fine. And then it won't really sit right until we clip it. So this is just one where it's going to be what it is now. So the official couture way to do this is to cut each individual layer. But I am not that couture for a seersucker test garment for a 6-year-old. So we are cutting through both layers in one spot. And that's not. Come on, come on. There we go. So I'm trimming into the corners here. Alright, clipping around the neck. My husband has been putting on the movie Fantasia 2000 as it entertains my 1-year-old. And one of the pieces in there I love. It's Shostakovich Piano Concerto for the moment. I can't remember which piano concerto. But I do love it. It's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful little piece of animation. But the song has been pounding through my head for the last 2 days. I think they watched it on, must have been Wednesday. I don't know. I don't even barely know what today is. The only day you need to know is that Friday isn't Saturday, and all the other days run together. But anyway, Shostakovich has been going through my head for 2 days. I played it on while I was working today to try to get it out of my head. But yeah. I'm done. I'm done, Shostakovich. It's beautiful, but you gotta get it out of my head. Ah. Alright. Cleaning these thick corners, making a mess of it. Clipping down the arm. Alright, so right here, obviously this is where the strap joins in, and it's super bulky right here where the strap is. So sometimes I'll try to grade that, particularly because there's interfacing on here, which is just adding to it all. So again, I am sure that there are fancy, here's the actual rules for how to grade with scissors. I have no idea if I'm following them or how close I am, but I kind of just really turn them at an angle. You'd be surprised how much of a difference you can get grading if you even just turn the scissors like this. I keep them within the seam allowance. Obviously, we don't want to cut any stitches. And then I just kind of trim down. So you can see that my stitches are right here. Can you see them? No, but my stitches are right here and the edge of the fabric is right there. So I did not cut, but then when I pull it through, it is substantially less bulky. So on a little sundress like this where it's all about comfort and flow, just a little seam allowance trim sometimes can really make it seem nice. Not a big deal. Okay, and now I will come back and understitch this probably. Because I'm gonna, well, I'll go ahead and understitch the front. So if you're not familiar with understitching, understitching is a way to kind of keep the seam allowance where it belongs. So the seam allowance, it's also, when you do that, it kind of helps pull this facing around back. And so instead of getting the seam in the front where you might see it, it pulls it just a tiny bit to the back, and it makes a really nice smooth line on the front of the garment. You can skip understitching, but it's a really easy, nice way to take it up a notch. And any ready-to-wear garment that I've had that wore nicely, that I kind of really enjoyed, most of them have had understitching. It's not a huge significant thing. So to do understitching, let's go back to this other view. So here is the seam allowance that I'm catching, and it's pointing this way. And then, so I lay it down this way, and when I stitch, I'm stitching through the facing layer, and then the seam allowance is underneath that. So I'm stitching facing and seam allowance. I do not stitch into the side of it that's going to be out front. So, and let's make sure my needle's in the middle position. I've got it understitching as just a regular stitch length. Just your standard straight stitch, no big deal. Now, as you can imagine, you'll see me come to this awkward place where the strap is. And by the way, I'm just eyeballing a 1/16 or so away from my seam. And not measuring. This is not fancy. So as I get closer to where this strap is, obviously I'm not going to be able to get my presser foot in there. Eventually it's going to be too tight. Like, I can get it as flat as I can for as far as I can. That's the goal. And then just wherever it is that I can't get it any flatter, like if I take another stitch it's going to pucker, I do a little backtack and call it good. We're done. Where's my snips? Okay. So let's see if we can. So you can kind of see. No, you cannot. But this is the understitched part, and it will pull. It's going to roll really nice, and it's going to have a nice smooth line there, versus on the side that isn't understitched. If I were to fold that back, you can kind of see that stitching line just a little bit easier from the front. It's pretty subtle, and in this terrible lighting with my not so awesome cameras, it's really hard to tell. But so once again, I'm going to do the exact same thing coming from the outside of the other part of the bodice. Just going to go as long as I can keep it flat. And there may have been a pucker. It's kind of hard to tell underneath the foot, so let's get that out and check it. In this case, I'm not super worried about it. Alright, oops, I forgot to switch camera to sewing. Let's check. No pucker. There's some tight stitching there, but I'll just give that a good press, and it looks great. Now I'm going to do one across the middle. The middle is tricky because I'm starting at a pucker place, and then it'll get easier, and then it's going to get harder again as I go back up toward the strap. But I'm just going to jam it under there, get as close as I can on the side with the strap, and then go as far as I can until it doesn't lay flat. And I've already gone. Don't stitch any puckers. That's the goal. And since I've done clipping, a little bit of more clipping on this middle section, it's harder to kind of catch that seam allowance, so I have to make sure all my little seam allowance pieces are going under the facing. Okay, need to trim some threads there, but there it is. Ta-da! So this little front piece here is kind of rolling funny, but pressing makes a huge difference. And if I need to, I could even restitch that understitching a bit if I need to, but probably I will just get a little aggressive with the iron, as we sewists tend to do, and that will be lovely. So this is completely done now. The only other piece is I will press up the seam allowance for when I'm going to attach it to the skirt. But that is all the sewing is done for this piece. So what we're going to do now for the back piece. First of all, I'm going to take a look. As you can tell, these pieces, get rid of my trash. I am a clean as you go kind of person. If you make a big mess and leave it to the end, I get overwhelmed and don't touch it too often. So it's best for me to just clean as you go. Okay, so the wider part, it kind of comes out. This is the bottom. This is the part that connects to the skirt. What I need to figure out is where do the straps connect. And I believe I traced this piece. I did. So if you can see, there are 2 notches, and I'm going to guess that they're going to go, hey look, those 2 notches are the exact width of this piece. So I should have cut them. I did. This one has it cut. This one has it cut. These have it cut, but I've now interfaced it, and I didn't mark where it went. But I think I see one there, and here is my, yeah. So for this one, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to put it on there. So we got to make sure that we get them, when it's done, it's going to need, when it's all sewed, we want both of the right sides, the interfaced sides, which are the right sides, facing up. Let's see if I can see these notches at all. Pretty sure it's right there. We'll double check. Okay, so this should be like this, and this should be underneath, faced it like this. Okay, so here is what it should be, except obviously this will be sewn together. Okay, so in order to get that, we have to flip this one this way, and I'm going to just do one side. I'm going to have to clip those because I cannot see it from this side for anything. So here's our wider side going down. Here are our notches. As soon as I put the paper on there, then of course, yeah, I can see it, but so put this wide side toward the bottom. There we go. There we go. Alright, so now we can just go and baste these between the marks. Just like I did on the front, I'm going to just baste them in within the seam allowance. Okay, we are sewing. Lined up. Basting, straight stitch, needles in the middle. Here's my marks. One mark. Come on, where's the other one? There it is. Just coverage in my head. Oops. Okay. So here we've got this piece so far. Is it right so far? We're going to flip this out. The interfacing will be up. Okay, cool. So far so good. Which means we now flip this one so that the wide sides match up like this. And this is the part where, oh, I'm not showing you. So this is the part where I'm going to get rid, because if I need to adjust strap length, I want to be able to unpick right here. I can't let it out, but again, length won't be the issue probably. I'm really thinking it's going to be too narrow, but if I need to do it, I'm going to unpick here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a regular stitch to about 1/2 inch before the strap. I'm going to baste over the strap to about 1/2 inch after, and then repeat on this side with a regular stitch, baste stitch, regular stitch. That way, if I need to unpick, I just unpick the strap and slide it to the right length, and then I'll pin it, and I'll come back in and stitch it regular when it's all done. So, I mean, I could do regular stitch now that I'm thinking about it. So that would be what I would do if I was really thinking it was going to change. That being said, I'm probably going to do the whole thing regular stitch. It'll still be what I do. If this really just doesn't fit, it's way too big, I unstitch this part right here for the straps and slide them in. But this is seersucker. It's a straight stitch. I will probably just do full stitch that way. I don't, because if I do basting, I'm going to have to come back and stitch it no matter what. Even if it fits, I have to come back and restitch it. I'm tired right now, so it seems like anything that can save me work in the future seems like a really good idea. So let's just go ahead and do that. Oops. See, this is why we check. Okay. Get it all lined up, and here we go. With that one. My heavy duty singer just goes right through that, really kind of thick, because this is interfaced, and So this one's interfaced and then folded in half. So it's pretty bulky. Now again, because I know I can't let it out, this is the max it's going to be. I am going to go ahead and grade this seam because again, any work I cannot do later, I'm going to try to just do now. So I'm going to go ahead and grade, tilt my scissors. They're you know, here is perfectly level to my table. Here is what I'm doing. I'm kind of doing it at a 45-degree angle. And I just am not getting my actual stitching in there. I'm also, if you notice, holding the seam allowance out of the way. So I hold the seam allowance back. The facing part is folded back. And then here is the strap sticking up. Here is my front facing. And then 45-degree angle, and just cut. Clean up a little bit. Okay. Now I can turn this inside out by flipping it. And in this case, I will not understitch because I kind of could, but then I would run the risk of having to unpick understitching, and that's actually probably more work. So at this point, I'm going to just stop because I want to try this on her without understitching on it. The next part is, okay, so here we are. Let's flip this over so we can get our baseline. This needs pressed really bad. Since I'm not understitching it, I will have to do some pressing on it, but I'm not worried about that at this second. I am all for pressing, but sometimes I do my pressing in batches. Maybe when I should have done it a little sooner, but you know, as long as it's the same result in the end, that's the key. Okay, so here, what's going to happen, now my interface side is my right side, my correct side, my front side, and then we're going to match our fronts here. And then to do the seam allowance, we are going to do this. Okay, so I've got the fronts. Here's the top seam of the bodice, and here are the facings lined up. And I'm not actually sure when you do this. I feel like the seam allowance should fold down, which can be weird if you stitch it this way. So you have to make sure that your seam allowance points down toward this way. Down toward the bottom of the front, not toward the facing piece. So it's this way. Okay. And then I'm just going to stitch it at 3/8 inch. Okay, so I just went over my seam allowance and I made sure it was pointing toward the front of the bodice. And there's my lining. I will repeat that on the other side. So I've got my interfacing sides, front, right sides together. And then I'm going to push my seam allowance toward the bottom of the front bodice. There's my facing. Stitch this down at 3/8 inch. That seam allowance tucked where it needs to be. Stop and pivot right where the seam so I can make sure my facing seams line up. So if I try this on her and I find that it's a bit too narrow, I can take a little bit out of there. I'm not finishing the seams. I would not normally finish because this is faced, lined. So there you go. That's the bodice done. Turn it right side out, get all the straps flipped around. That's what a puzzle piece feels like. Wow, it needs pressed, especially that back piece, but there you go. so far, so good. I've got, you can't see what's happening, front of it and the back of it with the straps. I'll get that tried on her, and then if it fits, I'll press up this piece and it'll be all good to go. So I won't sew any more on this until I try this piece on her, and then the next time we sew, it'll be adding the front panel to the bottom. So we'll be adding the ruffles that'll go in a full circle now. Then we'll attach the bodice to that, and then we'll hem it, and it'll be done. I'm going to hope to get this on her tomorrow. I will probably not stream tomorrow. I will probably stream Sunday morning. So Sunday morning I will finish this dress up. That's the plan. I might try to get to it tomorrow just because she might want to wear it Sunday. I don't know. So if it fits really well and she's excited about it, I might go ahead and stream tomorrow so I can finish it. In which case, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn on notifications, and you'll know if I go live. Otherwise, check on Sunday, and I'll see you then. Have a good evening.